I grew up in a haunted house, but the true horror began when I uncovered its dark secret. I never should have opened that door. I stood there, heart racing, staring at the chipped paint and warped wood. In that moment, dread crept in like a fog, thick and suffocating. Most days, the house felt like any other to me. The creaking floorboards, the rattling windowsill was just part of my life. But tonight, shadows danced down the hallway, flickering against the walls like restless spirits trapped in a nightmare. The air felt heavy, thick with whispers I couldn't quite catch. The dim light bulb hung low, casting eerie shadows that twisted and curled around the corners of the room. I could smell the dampness, the chill creeping in through the cracks. Each breath felt cooler, as if the house was exhaling something ancient and dark. My hands trembled, the hairs on my arms stood on end. Something was wrong. I walked down the hall, and the silence was deafening, so quiet it felt like the house was holding its breath. Then I heard it, a faint scratching, like nails on wood, drawing closer. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned toward the sound, expectantly, but nothing was there. Just darkness and the overwhelming urge to run. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I jumped back, almost stumbling over a loose floorboard. The sound had transformed, shifting from a whisper to a raspy voice, calling my name. I strained to listen. I shouldn't have opened that door. I felt an inexplicable pull, a compulsion to see what lay beyond. What if the voice belonged to something or someone lost? Or trapped? I edged closer, but the chill wrapped around me like icy fingers, paralyzing my movements. Objects around me shifted with every creak, shadows grew taller, and I swore I could see figures lurking at the edge of my vision. Fear clawed at my throat, a lump forming as I contemplated the door. As I reached out a shaky hand, the very air crackled with tension. In that moment, every instinct screamed at me to stop. But I couldn't. I needed to know what was on the other side. Just then, the door swung open with a resounding bang. My heart dropped, and before I could take a step back, a figure emerged from the darkness. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure that emerged was cloaked in a veil of shadows, a silhouette half-formed and impossibly distorted. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, to comprehend the horrific beauty of something that shouldn't exist in the realm of the living. The air buzzed with an unbearable tension, each second stretching into a suffocating eternity. The entity held its gaze upon me, its eyes like two voids, absorbing all light and hope. I could see glimmers of familiarity in those deep, dark hollows, a reflection of something once known, something lost. Help me, it rasped, voice a chilling echo as if each word fell from a mouth that hadn't uttered speech in 1,000 years. That I recoiled, overshadowed by instinctive fear, my rational mind wrestling with the horror that begged to be confronted. What are you? I managed to whisper, my throat dry, heartbeat thunderous in my ears. Trapped, it said, stretching a ghostly hand toward me. As it moved, I felt something stir within the still air, a gust of wind that brought with it an unbearable cold. I flinched at the touch of its icy fingers brushing against me, igniting an indescribable horror that writhed within my chest. The chill traveled through my bones, freezing my very essence. In a desperate attempt to reclaim my senses, I took a step back, but the door slammed shut behind me, the loud crack like a gunshot, cutting off my escape. Panic surged as I pounded on the wooden surface, the echoes of my cries swallowed by the dark, taunting silence. The figure remained resolute, eyes glowing faintly as it drew closer. Release me, please. Shadows flickered around us, curling like serpents. I caught glimpses of twisted faces behind the veil of darkness, their mouths opened in silent screams, voices that begged for freedom yet remained trapped in an unending nightmare. A chill ran through me. Were they like me, once living souls, now ensnared by this wretched house? Why should I help you? I shouted, my voice trembling. What if you're a monster? The figure paused, the shadows around it momentarily quaking at the sound of my defiance. Not a monster. A vessel of fate, it hissed. You know you felt it. This house remembers you. Remembered me? I stepped back, my mind racing through fragmented memories of my childhood, the games played in forgotten rooms, laughter now tainted with despair. The house hadn't just been haunted. It was alive, a living entity rooted in the essence of my past. See for yourself. The figure beckoned softly, and against my will, I felt a compulsion to look. I turned, glancing back at the door that was now a solid wall of darkness. The world around me warped, the shadows twisted into grotesque images of my past childhood home. The warmth of laughter, the chilling echo of a tragedy I had kept buried. Suddenly, the air crackled violently, and the very walls began to pulse, thick and alive. The floor trembled, resonating with wails from the inhabitants of the shadows. I was caught in a storm of voices, some familiar, others malevolent, all reaching out. Then, chaos erupted around us. The room warped and bled, splashing shadows that enveloped everything. A scream burst forth, raw and unrelenting, jolting me back to the present. The figure surged forward, its intent to reach me cloaked in desperation. Yet where the beauty of its plea once lay, terror now reigned. Help me. It screamed, the pitch rising into a banshee's wail. My mind whirled, hypnotized by the maelstrom of cries, and I stumbled backward into oblivion. In that instant, I realized I had backed into another realm pierced with overlapping horrors, specters of memories long confined to the darkness where I had kept them hidden. Each face, every shadow, bore the haunting mark of faces I thought I had forgotten. Just as I grasped the shadowed tendrils curling around my wrists, I felt a sharp, bracing heat creep along my side. Too late, I realized the fire of the house had awakened, igniting in a frenzy fueled by my fear. And then, everything crashed into a cacophony of darkness, screams, and flames. I couldn't tell what was real or illusion as the walls began to close in, suffocating the space around me. Join us, the figure whispered, its voice like ice dissolving in boiling water, and I felt 6 icy hands seize my shoulders as the ground slipped away beneath me. I screamed, my voice drowned out in the sea of chaos, knowing that my fate was sealed. The world dissolved into shadows, and in the depths of that darkness, a single, harrowing truth rose. I was no longer within the walls of the house but within the merge of endless souls desperate for escape. Then came the silence, the crushing realization of surrender just before they whispered my name. As the whispers flared to life around me, I perceived fragmented glimpses of the past branching out like long-forgotten memories clawing at the surface, seeking to reclaim their place. There in the depths, the faces morphed from terrifying specters to familiar entities etched into the fabric of my heart. My mother's eyes glistened with tears, her voice so close I could almost reach out to embrace her. Yet, her form twisted, warped with sorrow and despair, a victim of the malevolent force that gripped this haunted dwelling. Help me, my mother's voice echoed, blending into the cacophony of tortured souls pleading for liberation. The tainted veil tightened around me, the shadows grasping with desperation, their cold fingers entwining with the warmth of my memories. No, let me go, I cried, fighting against the ephemeral bonds that wrapped tighter with each plea. In that moment of defiance, an eruption of flames surged through the shadows. The house itself writhed as if alive, combating the blistering heat that radiated through dimensions. I had to escape, had to sever the connection to this nightmare. The figure loomed larger, its distorted visage flickering behind an infernal haze, merging and separating like smoke in a veil. You cannot leave. You belong to us. In a frantic surge, I wrenched my arms free, wrenching myself from the grasp of the twisting darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. I turned, seeking a glimmer of hope amid the suffocating gloom. Instead, I stumbled upon an apparition snarling with anger, a visage grotesquely marred by flames and sorrow, eyes blinking back the hints of life lost within its ruined form. Why do you resist? The disfigured figure rasped, a voice riddled with despair, as if pain dictated its existence. You were not meant to escape. You were chosen. The ground beneath me trembled once more, the air thickening with an ominous dread, and I became aware of the shadows morphing into silhouettes of my past, intertwining threads of joy twisted into agony. Each pale face yearned for relief, dragging me into an abyss of haunting familiarity. Their elongated shadows melded into each other like dancers embracing an endless waltz of torment. "Your father," a voice whispered from the depths, a sound slithering effortlessly through the chaos, and I felt a pull as though a well of memories threatened to swallow me whole. Hadn't he also lost himself to this twisted fate? With a sinking heart, I turned to observe a figure looming against the backdrop of all-consuming darkness, a shadow of a man I had once known, now marred by desperation and fear. "No," I gasped, flooded with visceral regret. "Please, not you." The dread swelled, a tidal wave threatening to drown me. Yet, before I could recoil, the entity surged forward, a maelstrom of outstretched limbs reaching out wildly. "You made him suffer." The echo of the tortured soul's cry reverberated against the walls of my mind, piercing straight through my chest like a dagger. The flames surged again, a desperate battle between the warmth of living memory and the dragging cold of regret that threatened to envelop everything. I fought harder, seeking solace in the chaos, when suddenly my vision sharpened, and I spotted a small glimmer glowing faintly in the half-light at the edge of the room. It was a door. Racing with a renewed sense of purpose, I pushed past the twisted apparitions, the shadows screaming in rage as they clawed at me. "You cannot leave. You are ours," they roared, their voices blending into a monstrous symphony that howled throughout the suffocating enclosure. With every ounce of strength, I reached for the door, my fingers brushing against its cool handle, when I felt an icy grip enclose around my wrist, locking me in place. "Stay!" It shrieked with a voice that surged like a gust of wind, sharp and piercing, resonating with an intensity that rattled my bones. I screamed, a visceral, primal cry that resonated through the hallways of my mind as I fought against the tightening grip, my heart thundering. My gaze darted back to the gathered figures, twisted, spirits of torment manifesting before me in swirling chaos. They thrummed with an energy that pushed back against the flame, echoing "Join us. Embrace the past," and in the moment of my greatest defiance, when all hope seemed poised to slip away, the door yanked open with a deafening roar. Light flooded into the darkness, blinding in its incorruptible purity. It was the first light that felt like salvation. But just as I crossed the threshold, an anguished scream erupted from within the darkness, the voice of my mother rising above the chaos. "Don't leave me." Everything shimmered in a heartbeat. And as I stood at the precipice, ready to step into the light, I hesitated, my heart split between love and terror. There was a moment, just a breath, where I could almost feel her presence, the warmth of her love wrapping around me. And then it happened. The shadows surged forward with a ferocity that felt like the destruction of the very foundations of reality itself. The door slammed shut behind me, the light flickering in a shockingly oppressive darkness, as I sensed an insatiable hunger still pursuing me, clawing at my form that I stumbled away, a sudden chill enveloping me, leaving no trace of warmth in the very air I breathed. It was a truth more terrifying than anything I had ever encountered. I had escaped the house, but it had not released its grip on me. As I turned to run into the night, I heard a single, echoing phrase emanating from the darkness that would haunt my very essence. "We are coming for you," and in that moment, I understood. The night was just beginning, and the shadows still hungered for something far darker than I could ever imagine. The wind howled like a wounded beast as I emerged from the house, an abyss of darkness now sealed behind me. It felt like a great cosmic joke. I had escaped, yet I could sense the lingering presence of malevolence crawling beneath my skin, suffocating me with fear. The streetlights flickered uncertainly, casting quivering shadows that danced around me like ghosts celebrating the passage of a soul into the world of the living. I staggered forward, the echoes of that dreadful house still reverberating in my mind, cacophony of anguish that pulsed with a rhythm both alien and all too familiar. The taste of bile rose in my throat, a visceral reminder of the horror still coiled around my heart. I had to leave, to put miles between myself and that cursed dwelling, but my feet felt rooted, tangled in the unseen threads of dread. With reluctance, I turned to the road stretching before me, obscured under thick layers of mist. Each step seemed to awaken remnants of memories buried in the corners of my mind, an endless loop of specters whispering of past sorrows. The cries of lost souls amplified, punctuating the quiet of the night with their desperate pleas, but I was more than an innocent caught in a web of horrors spun by others. I was awakened to a truth, a deep and aching reality. It was not just my parents' anguish that had bred this entity. It had seeped into my soul, shaped by my own regrets, fears, and choices. I was as much a part of their suffering as they were of mine. With determination, I forged ahead, my heart racing in tandem with my thoughts. Suddenly, a flicker of movement drew my attention to a grotesque figure standing at the edge of the road, half buried in the fog, its features obscured, but somehow elusively familiar. My breath caught in my throat. The figure twisted itself into the very essence of nightmares, shadows contorting into the semblance of a human form, shrouded in tendrils of darkness. Don't you remember? The voice slithered into the air, unmistakably that of my father through the veil of agony. His essence awaited, trapped in a prison built of sorrow and torment. You are one of us now, no, I shouted, the word erupting from me like a shockwave. The horror of that house bore down upon my shoulders, dragging memories out from the recesses of my mind, twisting them into something monstrous. I felt the spectral hands pulling at my ankles, haunting echoes muttering promises of torment each time I turned back to look. As I quickened my pace, the chilling laughter broke through the mists. You cannot run from your heritage, they taunted, a sinister chorus echoing in unison. I stumbled, panic rising, when the sound of footsteps grew louder in the darkness behind me. Adrenaline surged, urging me to propel myself forward, but at every turn, I was met with the surreal intensity of shadowy figures pouring out of the mist, their shapes nebulous yet hauntingly familiar. I recognized a slight build and sharp, piercing eyes, me mother, trapped in that void, face twisted in unearthly despair. Go back. You cannot escape who you are. Her voice thundered amidst the growing clamor, causing the ground beneath me to tremble with its weight. Please, no, I gasped, tears streaming down my cheeks. The battle within me waged on, my resolve against the love binding me to their torment. That haunting warmth I had once coveted was now a frigid sword turning ever deeper with each step I took away. I was caught in this horrific conundrum: leave and face solitude, or return to the horror that birthed me. I tore through the fog, screaming for escape. The world grew distorted. Shadows snaked around each corner, waiting, watching, pressing in closer with every heartbeat. Just as hope flickered like a dying candle, I felt something cold and heavy grasp my arm, pulling me back into the depths of the engulfing darkness. It's too late, an insidious whisper slithered alongside the tightening grip. My heart thudded violently against my ribs, an instinctive plea for life amid an onslaught of despair. Before I could scream, the shadows convulsed, coiling tighter, blurring my vision, and I was transported back to that placid, suffocating space filled with the souls of unrepentant anguish. I stood surrounded again by twisted forms, horrors that feasted on forgotten memories and slivers of the past, formerly cherished. You belong to us, they interlaced, voices rising like an infernal crescendo. Join the dance, embrace your fate. And in that very instant, as I was dragged deeper into the shadowed abyss, I realized the terrible truth I had long denied. It was not the house that held me captive. It was my own heart, festering with guilt and sorrow, alive with the haunting echoes that beckoned me back to them. And just before the darkness swallowed my scream, I could feel the mist swirling, coiling around something corporeal and horrifying that was awakening within me, a malevolent seed that would blossom under the weight of despair, giving rise to an unspeakable horror far greater than all I had known. Welcome back, came the voice of my father, but this time it wasn't drenched in pain. It roared with a twisted joy that melted into a cacophony of laughter, echoing through the void. As the darkness enveloped me, a sickening revelation grounded itself deep within. My Sully was no longer simply a victim. I was becoming their worst nightmare. The laughter reverberated in the air, a chilling symphony that clawed at my sanity as I trembled in the unfolding darkness. As my vision wavered and light gradually succumbed to the impenetrable black surrounding me, I felt fragments of my identity splintering away, lost in the void beyond reach. In that terrifying moment, an agonizing yearning churned within, a dreadful desire to connect with the shadows that sought to reclaim me. "Awaken, child." My father's voice coiled around me like serpents, soothing yet insidiously manipulative. "Embrace what you are, what we had always intended for you." But deep down, a sliver of resistance still flickered against the weight of despair, sharp as a knife made of ice. The relentless pull of that otherworldly domain surged through me, an unveiling of secrets long buried. Flickers of distant memories raced through my mind, warping and merging with the voices lurking just beyond the edges of my consciousness. Images of laughter drenched in sorrow, of joyous family gatherings disturbed by faint echoes of grief. They blurred together, painting a mural of tragedy that gnawed at the very fabric of my being. That I fought against the encroaching darkness, igniting a flicker of desperation. "Get away from me," I screamed, hurling the bitter anguish of my past into the shadows. But it only fed them further, their laughter morphing into a cacophony of cries for acceptance. Silence fell momentarily, as though the dark horde paused to consider my rebellion, and my breath hitched in anticipation. Then, the shadows coalesced into something tangible, a swirling torrent of grotesque shapes, forming a macabre vortex around medark specters crafted from my own fears and regrets, eyes glinting with cruel delight. They twisted, they wriggled. I could see the faces of familiar people among them, friends lost to time, each distorted into a grotesque parody of their former selves. "Look, your beloved ones, suffering just like we do." My heart cracked open, a flood of shame inundating me. How many had been dragged down by my selfishness? Their forms writhed and pleaded, tormented by my choices, and for each face I recognized, another layer of horror unfurled into existence. A mother who had abandoned her dying child, a brother lost to addiction, an old friend buried under a weight of betrayal, each rooted in my deepest regrets. And oh, I howled, struggling against the fabric of my own creation. A surge of anger filled me, targeting the wretched souls, inciting them to the surface even as I imploded with grief. "You can't make me want this. I'm not like you." But my resolve splattered against the unyielding darkness, shattered like glass upon impact. They fed upon my anguish, their chorus rising to new heights, enveloping me wholly, their twisted forms now closer, the essence of despair painting a world that was once mine. With a sudden ferocity, a shudder ran through the shadows, pulsating like a heartbeat, as though sensing my yearning to detach from their embrace. "You're one of us, one of us," they chanted, the words a hypnotic mantra. I squeezed my eyes shut, conjuring any memory that would anchor me back to reality. A fleeting image burst through me. Life before that house had become a grotesque caricature of dread. Laughter by the riverbank, the scent of spring flowers blooming, warmth radiating from shared meals. I latched onto it with an iron grip, summoning strength from moments long buried. "Use it," the voice of my mother called out, merging with those around me in a cacophony of despair. "Let it in." The moments of light and warmth began to swirl together with shadows until they warped, creating juxtaposed images that shattered the delicate barrier between them. I suddenly smelled smoke, and searing heat licked at my skin. Memories of a fire, horrific screams, chaotic running, and the crackling inferno blocking my escape. "Stop! I won't go back," I cried, but as I opened my eyes, the shadows thickened around me, spiraling inward. They flickered like flames, throbbing in a rhythm that mimicked my heartbeat. The warmth grew overwhelming, stealing my breath and sending a wave of panic coursing through me. And then, like a nightmare spilling into reality, the surroundings morphed, transforming the ethereal landscape into a twisted replica of the very house I had fled. Every corner dripped with malicious intent, pulsing with the combined sorrow of countless lost souls. A flickering light caught my attention, emanating from the inky shadow. Door at the end of the familiar hallway slowly creaked ajar, beckoning me to step inside. "And oh, don't open it," I screamed, as if my voice could halt the inevitable. But compulsion climbed my spine, anchoring me in place. They surged around me, insistent in their demands, each accusing gaze urging me forward, unraveling any thread of hope I clung to. Just as my hand reached toward the threshold, The atmosphere ignited with a blinding radiance, and a piercing scream tore through the air, a horrifying, otherworldly wail that sliced through my heart. In that instant, I knew it was her scream, the scream of a lost mother, a harbinger of dread that heralded untold horrors lying just beyond. My resolve shattered like stained glass as I crossed into the threshold, the embrace of darkness heralding something greater, more unraveling than I dared to imagine. And as I stepped inside, the door sealed shut behind me with a thunderous crash, and the echoes of laughter became the harbinger of something ancient awakening, something that would change everything I thought I understood about life, death, and my cursed legacy. Inside the room, darkness clung to the walls like a cowl draped over a sinister figure waiting to pounce. The air was thick, almost tangible, pulsating with a malevolent energy that seemed to crawl across my skin. It smelled of decay and despair, every breath laced with the remnants of lost hope. As the door crashed shut behind me, I felt a clamp of dread tightening around my chest, constricting any rational thought. In stark contrast to the enveloping dark, a faint flicker danced across the floor, a lone candle sputtering in the corner. Its flickering glow cast elongated shadows that writhed like serpents, flicking playfully toward me before retreating, seemingly taunting my vulnerability. I took a hesitant step forward, curiosity intertwined with terror, knowing instinctively that the flickering flame would illuminate the secrets buried in this cursed sepulchre. Bare wooden floorboards groaned under my weight as I approached, sending shivers rippling through my spine and igniting primal instincts to flee. Everything felt wrong, dislocated, malicious. The candlelight cast trembling images against the walls, portraying ghostly whispers of the pasta collage of faces twisted in torment. They looked familiar, and I recoiled, memories flooding back, each face a fragment of my history, coaxing forth a surge of guilt and anguish. Then, I noticed an inscription etched deep into the wall behind the flickering flame. It shimmered in the dusky light, obscured by shadow but shimmering just enough to coax my eyes closer. As I ran my fingers over the inscription, its chill seeped into my skin. I could almost hear the words whisper within the confines of my mind, an echo of fervent incantation repeating itself in an unsettling lullaby. Those who enter shall never leave. Their souls are bound to the keeper of sin. A flash of movement sent my heart racing. Shadows danced just beyond the periphery of the candlelight, coalescing into forms that twisted playfully, teasing yet predatory. Panic ignited a firestorm of adrenaline, but the dark whispers permeated my thoughts. Stay. Discover what lies ahead. I tore my gaze away from the unsettling inscription and turned to the rusted filing cabinet that stood against the wall, its surface layered in dust and encrusted with the remnants of a long-dead world. An unexplainable urge compelled me to delve deeper. With a groan, I opened a drawer, and a scream lodged in my throat at the sight before me, a collection of faded photographs, snapshots of life frozen in time. Each one depicted the same family throughout the years, their faces slowly eroding into anguish, eyes darkened by despair. As my fingers brushed against the photographs, a low hiss slithered through the room, momentarily freezing me in place. The candle flickered violently, struggling against an unseen force, before plunging the room into desolate darkness. My heart thundered in the silence, and I scrambled to relight it, fumbling with trembling hands until the flame leapt once more to life. But the pictures had changed. The faces no longer wore expressions of sorrow, but twisted into malevolent grins. They seemed to be watching me, reveling in my unease. "You have awakened us," a voice purred from the recesses of darkness, thick like honey, yet laced with poison. "We were slumbering in debt, waiting for one such as you." My breath quickened. "Who are you?" I rasped, but the shadows merely gyrated and converged, tightening around the perimeter, enclosing me further. "Your family," it hissed, the hiss morphing into a laughter that reverberated around me like thunder, trembling against my heart. "Bound by secrets older than time. We will show you the truth, the price of which you must pay." In a dreadful rush, the walls morphed again, peeling back like a curtain of memories, unveiling scenes from long ago, scenes that pricked at every corner of my mind. I stood amongst them, lost in the echoes of voices calling upon me to partake in a dark ritual, faces of my ancestors rotting and decaying with a fervor I had never known. No. I screamed, attempting to retreat, but my feet were glued to the floor, roots growing deep into the ground beneath, intertwining with the sorrow that pooled into the very foundation of the house. Join us. Embrace your legacy, they chanted, their forms blurring together into a grotesque semblance of family, taunting me with the sins they wished to purge through my flesh. You hold the key. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the far side of the room, and my body jolted as a figure launched itself from the darkness, slamming into the depths of the flickering light. As it broke into the boundary, the candle flickered violently once more, revealing a face I recognized, a warped reflection of my own, twisted and dark, eyes glowing with a glint of malicious intent. And oh, I gasped, as the realization sunk deep, a gut-wrenching familiarity blooming along with dread. In this horrid cacophony of laughs, roars, and whispers, I discerned the truth. The specter bore my resemblance. And just as layers of darkness threatened to submerge me completely, a visceral scream erupted from my own throat, echoing in distress. I was caught in a duality, one yearning to join them, another resolved to escape. I struggled against the onslaught. The walls pulsated, a great shudder coursing through them. The candle snuffed out, leaving me plunged once more into darkness. The last sound I heard was a chorus of anguished, taunting laughter, mingling with my own desperate cries. And there, in the stifling void, I felt the horrid pull of something slithering out from the depths, something ancient and unforgiving, a keeper of my legacy, awakened to feed upon my very soul. In the suffocating darkness, the weight of the world crashed in around me, smothering every thought, blotting out any flicker of hope. Air hung heavy with despair, clinging like a shroud, and the taunting laughter from the other side echoed relentlessly in my mind. I desired to tear away, to stumble back into the light that had flickered and danced, but something tethered me, a monstrous gravitational pull that I felt it coiling around my legs, roots of the past ensnaring me tighter, and with every frantic heartbeat, the shadows drew nearer, whispering forgotten names filled with desperation and longing. You are one of us now, the distorted echoes purred, each repetition plunging my heart into icy waters. But in my darkness, a spark of defiance ignited. I am not like you, I screamed inside my mind, fighting against the pull, thrashing as the dark warmth wrapped around my torso, constricting like a serpent tightening its grip. I braced myself, straining to pull free, to escape this confounding tomb where memories and nightmares danced in a maddening blur. Then it happened, a bright flash, slicing through the murk like a knife. A woman stood before me, a specter clothed in tattered linen, features translucent, but her eyes burning with a furious intensity that cut through the void. You must remember, she urged, her voice reverberating around me. If you forget, they take you. If you embrace them, they will devour you. My eyes darted across her ghostly form, searching for clarity amidst the chaos swirling in my mind. The images thickened, fragmented glimpses of my childhood unfurled, bringing with them a rush of memories long buried, a birthday party long past, the laughter of a distant cousin, the yellowing walls of the very house I had grown up in, all entwined with a malice that dripped from the air. Your history isn't a ghost, it's a demon, the voice echoed, warping into a haunting chorus of betrayal and darkness, as if my ancestors had risen, hungry for redemption at my expense. It lives within you, waiting to emerge. Before I could form a response, light flickered perilously bright, and for the briefest moment, the candle reignited, casting shadows that shrieked and recoiled away from it. Faces appeared, those tortured visages from the photographs, caught in grotesque agony, mouths opening in silent screams of desperate warnings. Join us, they beckoned. Your fate is intertwined. You cannot escape your blood. Suddenly, a figure shot through the doorway, a monstrous shadow cast against the wall, hurling itself towards me with a speed that stole the breath from my lungs. It lunged close, and within the dim candlelight, I was shocked. What stood before me was not only another twisted reflection, but an amalgamation, a mirror shattered into splintered fragments of all I had been. I am your past, it hissed, a ghastly whisper oozing with malice, and never shall you be free. We are intertwined, forever and always. I felt my heart clench. I was surrounded, cornered by familiar horrors reshaped and reborn. Each scream weaved into a tapestry of despair that bound me. You can't hold me, I roared, choking on panic. Still tangled in that hideous embrace, the thunder echoed, rattling the very foundation of the house. Eardrum piercing, a sonorous explosion that rattled every bone in my body, reverberating through the walls that seemed animated, pulsing with malevolent purpose and rage. Your denial feeds us, they cried, their voices clamoring, rising to a fevered pitch as they danced in wild ecstasy around me. Accept your lineage. Remember the ritual. As the cavernous room distorted, depths gaping wide with shadows turning into a gushing maw, it all slammed across me in bleak realization. The house isn't just haunted, it is alive. And I had revived a ravenous entity slumbering beneath the surface, feeding off the remnants of the family left to rot in its embrace. But amidst their chaos, one final glimmer broke through the woman's face bound in anguish. Fight, she pleaded, as her tattered form shimmered brighter, reaching toward me with a gnarled hand. In that vivid moment, I felt the fabric of reality rip away and the gory truth clawing its way through. With a determined scream, I lunged toward her, tearing through the swirling shadows that threatened to pull me under. But just as I grasped her hand, a deafening crack split the air. The walls trembled, splintering under the weight of untold suffering. And in a terrifying instant of clarity, I saw a glimpse of the house's abominable heart, throbbing like a living organism infused with malice. And then the floor opened beneath me, a gaping void waiting to swallow my very essence. The last vestiges of my being hovering on the precipice of oblivion. In that soul-chilling moment, I realized this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The Keeper of Sins had caught my scent, and now I was not merely a ghost drawn from the past, but a vessel, a portal, through which the horrors would erupt into the living world. I plummeted into the darkness. A voice echoed behind me, resonating in the recess of despair. Welcome home. The fall was relentless, each fraction of a second stretching into eternities as I tumbled through the abyss. Choking on darkness, I fought against the oppressive pressure that pressed against my mind, threatening to consume my very soul. Just as my vision flickered, an electric jolt coursed through me. A surge of memories unfolded like black wings unfurling, a chaotic embrace of my family's past that had been stitched together by blood and betrayal. My ancestors, their faces etched into a tapestry of anguish, wove seamlessly through my mind, their eyes boring into mine, begging for acknowledgement. I saw fragments of their Levisa family gathering marked by laughter twisted with a lurking dread, a child's birthday marked by gifts, and the inevitable fingers of fate reaching out, shrouded in shadow. A scream clawed at my throat. Suddenly, my descent halted as abruptly as a snare spring. I landed not on solid ground, but atop a river of viscous black liquid that writhed and pulsed beneath me, throbbing with life. Guttural moans filled the air, echoing from every corner of this new realm. A moon pierced the darkness, its glow staining the landscape in ghastly shades of gray, revealing a surreal world painted in despair. I looked around, gasping. It was the very soul of the house, manifested in grotesque, twisted architecture, where walls breathed and whispered secrets. The air thickened as disembodied whispers slithered about me, curling around my limbs like sinuous tendrils. Welcome to the heart, they hissed, and with each word, I recoiled slightly, the sensation creeping beneath my skin like ants at a feast. They spoke of rituals, of sacrifices spat forth from the depths of hunger and longing, reminiscent of generations lost to the insatiable darkness. Do you understand? A voice, eerily familiar, slithered from the shadows. I turned slowly, breath caught in my throat. Before me stood the spectral woman cloaked in tattered linen. Though now her visage flickered with more clarity, her eyes bore the weight of centuries, every sorrow graven on her visage. You must understand, she insisted, her voice laced with urgency. They need your pain. Us. They won't let you leave until you embrace the history that binds you. The air crackled with energy, and as she raised her hands, The ground trembled beneath me. Those around me, shadows whirling, began to take on forms me own ancestors, embodying the despair that had ensnared them. Join us, they cried in unison, their once tender spirits twisted into grotesque parodies of themselves. Scream your truth. Let it blow through this darkness. A cacophony erupted, gnashing teeth and clawing fingers reaching toward me, each grasping at my flesh with a need that froze the very marrow of my bones. I can't. I screamed, the sound echoing against the cavernous walls, ricocheting like the beating of a wounded heart. But in that moment of resistance, a pulse surged, urging with warmth as the shadows recoiled, and another memory gripped me, a vision of my childhood bedroom, where blood had soaked the floorboards from a night I wished had vanished. Remember, the woman implored, stepping closer, though her ghostly form flickered dangerously. Remember the night it all changed. A sudden darkness snapped into focus. Sharp, piercing laughter mingled with frightened cries. It was as if I was there again, me parents at each other's throats. Anger incandescent as it electrified the air, talk of things better left forgotten, skirmishes erupting into violence, the unrelenting grasp of a family bound not by love, but by darker ties. Before me manifested an altar crowned with grotesque offerings, figures stripped of their humanity, gold and jewels crushed in a pile of forgotten sacrifices. All to appease the house, the shadows murmured, quivering with dark delight. Only then will we be freed. A tidal wave of horror swept through me, unraveling my resolve. No, I clawed at the air, heart racing, but it felt as if each ounce of will was being siphoned away, the memories sinking their teeth deeper. I want to forget. I don't want to be part of this. The faces around me twisted in glee, as if feasting upon my defeat. Then the darkness will claim your essence. Renounce the light, they chanted, echoing the hellish rhythm of the house's hungry heart that began to pound in sync with my own. Just then, the dark liquid at my feet began to ripple violently. It was angry, thrashing like a trapped beast. Feed us, echoed a voice that resonated with my own, and I froze, blood turning to ice. I don't know. I want. I cried, my voice blending with the tortured remnants of my family. But just as a surge of defiance ignited, the ground ripped open beneath me, revealing the gaping maw once again, the very heart of the house. A blinding light emerged, swirling, pulling me down, deeper into the horror. Accept your sacrifice, I heard the voice whisper, heavy and sweetened with promises of liberation. As I was drawn closer to an omnipotent darkness, a final thought consumed me, blood must spill for the house to wake. And then, in that moment of complete submission, an anguished scream shattered the silence, a child's voice, calling out for help, shattering the very fabric of this wretched realm. The world spiraled inward, and just as my heart faltered, I realized it wasn't over. It had only begun, but as I turned to confront the shrill cry, the shadows rushed in, darkness swallowing every glimmer of hope. I caught one last glimpse of the now derelict house, its rotting structure casting a sinister silhouette against the glowing void, as a wave of panic set in. The child, who was calling, and then everything went black. When the black void finally swallowed me whole, I felt the weight of despair press against my chest, constricting my breath. In the silence that followed, a whisper flickered through the darkness, chilling my bones, a whisper that seemed to resonate with ancient sorrow. As if summoned by my fear, the weight of my family's history began to push at me, its icy tendrils wrapping around my spirit, dragging me back into the depths of anguish. I blinked, fighting against disorientation. The air thickened and shifted, heavy with unspent rage, and then I found myself sprawled across a cold stone floor, gasping as the memories of the house dried like marrow in my bones. I was no longer in that swirling abyss, but somewhere else entirely, a long-forgotten cellar filled with remnants of discarded belongings and the silent echoes of lives cut short. Light flickered overhead, revealing walls smeared with what looked like ancient blood-crimson stains sprawled like a map across the stone, leading to a rusted iron door, cracked and riddled with age. The sinister aura of the place wrapped around me like a shroud, tight and suffocating. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, yet morbid curiosity gripped me, compelling me to rise. With each shuffling footstep, I felt the air grow colder, condensing around me like a breath held too long. The whispers returned, more insistent now, their voices layered and discordant, blending past lamentations with frantic secrets as though they fought to be heard. "Do not turn back," they hissed, a warning laced with malevolence. "What waits beyond is the truth you dread." I reached the rusted door, its metallic surface pocked with age, and hesitated, my heart thundering in my chest. Just then, the echo of the child's scream erupted in my ears, clearer than before, enveloping me with an urgency too profound to ignore. It beckoned me with a promise of rescue, yet a deep pit of foreboding rose within me. Was it truly a cry for help, or a lure into deeper horror? Drawing a shaky breath, I pushed the door open, the creak sending a shiver up my spine. I stepped into a narrow corridor, stifling shadows clinging to every edge, as the child's voice echoed in desperate intervals, urging me onward. With each step, the walls seemed to close in, a claustrophobic reminder that the house was alive. Aware of my presence and hungry that I stumbled down the hall, the floor creaking ominously beneath my weight. The voice was clearer now. I could almost discern its pitch, desperate yet familiar. "Help me. Please help." It surged through the air with a heart-wrenching clarity that sparked every instinct to race deeper into the lair of my own nightmares. Suddenly, the walls trembled, and a soft glow emanated from a door at the end of the corridor. The gentle hum of the child's plead was soothing in its innocence, touching a tender part of my heart I thought was long buried beneath the rubble of my family's darkness. What awaited me beyond the door could unearth the buried secrets or plunge me further into madness. I reached the door, hand trembling on the handle. With a swift jerk, I yanked it open and there sat an old wooden chair, its surface worn, tied with fraying ropes. In the chair, strapped in place, was a child no older than 7, wide-eyed and trembling. Dark hair framed her face, tousled and matted, streaks of dirt cascading down her cheeks where tears had carved paths. "Help me," she wailed, her voice trembling, echoing my every fear. I lunged forward, untying the ropes as fast as I could. The frantic whispers intensified, surrounding me like a storm, urging me to take her away from this cursed place, to flee before it claimed another soul. But it was then that I noticed the sharpened glint of something metallic, a silver blade lying beside the chair, its sharp tip glistening with fresh, crimson stains. I recoiled, stumbling back as dread surged through me like ice water. The child's innocent face twisted momentarily, her pleading eyes narrowing, an unsettling shift in her expression that left me breathless. "No, you can't leave me. Join us," she hissed, her voice morphing into an unearthly tone, dripping with malice that chilled my bones. The shadows around her pulsed, writhing and coiling, emboldened by my hesitation. "Your blood, your sacrifice," the whispers echoed, the pitch rising into an unsettling choir of demands. The house shuddered, the very walls breathing as if awakening from slumber. I could feel its insatiable hunger clawing at me, calling me to join a lineage of despair. But just as I made my choice to retreat, a violent tremor surged through the floor, splitting the ground beneath my feet. The child let out a bone-chilling shriek, and as I turned to escape, time slowed, stretching into excruciating agony. The room imploded around me, shadows reaching, grasping for life as the doorway began to close. That I dove toward freedom, the ground crumbling beneath me as I heard her voice, sweet and sinister, scream into the void, "You can't escape what you are." And then the darkness descended. I awoke on a cold surface, gasping for air as the remnants of dread slithered throughout my body. Panic surged within me. I shot up, looking around, trying to piece together what had happened. The walls were not those of the house, but instead felt ancient, a cave, or perhaps a forgotten tomb. I was surrounded by the same darkness that once haunted me in my childhood, yet something fundamental had changed. Flickering lamplights caught my attention as they danced and twisted along the damp walls, casting grotesque shadows that morphed into writhing shapes, teasing at the edges of my mind. I could hear whispers, a cacophony of lost souls that pulled at the recesses of my consciousness, beckoning me deeper into their web of despair. From somewhere far beyond the walls, I heard it again, the child's voice, clearer now, a siren's call echoing with urgency and sweetness. Help me, please. Driven by instinct, I shuffled through the cave-like passage, ignoring the way my skin prickled with disbelief. The further I went, the more I felt the weight of something monumental hanging just out of sight, lurking, waiting. My heart raced with each step, the whispers growing into chants of malignant prayer that thrummed beneath the floor, tethering me to the cursed traditions of my bloodline. Then, I stumbled into an open chamber, illuminated by an otherworldly glow seeping from a central alcove. My breath caught as I beheld a tableau that sent chills through my very marrow. In the center stood the old wooden chair, now cracked and splintering, adorned with crimson stains that glistened in the dim light. And there, strapped to its arms, was the child-twisted shadows surrounding her, echoing her anguished cries. "Help me," she wailed, but this time, the depth of her voice morphed, becoming layered with something sinister. "Join us. Embrace your destiny." Terror stabbed through me. This wasn't a call for rescue, it was an ultimatum. The shadows tightened around her, contorting her form until she appeared as a grotesque reflection of the innocent child I had first found. Behind her, phantoms loomed me ancestors, their faces twisted with glee and longing, powerful whispers weaving through the air, lacerating my sanity. "See," they chanted, "this is who you were meant to be. One of us. Your sacrifice is your redemption." I stumbled backward, the realization crashing over me like a tsunami of dark revelations. The child wasn't merely a captive. She was a luria representation of my own fears, my own lineage, and the horror I had inadvertently inherited. This was a cycle, a ritual one that I had unwittingly participated in since I had set foot in that ill-fated house in that moment. The shadows coalesced and took form, merging into a grotesque parody of my family. Each face familiar, yet twisted with darkness, a visual testament to the despair my lineage had sown through the ages. Their mouths curled into malicious grins, and they beckoned toward me, summoning shadows from the very depths of my despair. "Embrace your legacy. You cannot escape." I felt a suffocating sensation as the shadows pressed against my skin, coiling around me like a serpent, threatening to consume my very essence. "No," I shouted, the defiance clawing its way out of my throat, raw and desperate. "You're wrong. I refuse." Suddenly, a powerful rage surged through me, igniting a flame of rebellion that flickered against the impending darkness. I could see the child's eyes widen, a flicker of confusion breaking through the malicious facade. "Please," she begged, a shifting tone still echoing that desperate innocence. "Don't leave me. Help us." The air thickened, binding me to the pain and memories that had created this nightmare. But I focused, centering my thoughts on the fragments of light and love I had once known. I remembered laughter by the riverbank, the warmth of a hand squeezing mine, the joy of family untainted by shadows. The shadows shrieked and recoiled at my defiance, writhing with fury, but emboldened, I took a step toward the child. "No more. I will not let fear bind us." Suddenly, the ground trembled, and I felt an unbearable pull, the alcove pulsating as a howl of wind erupted within me, and the walls began to close in, malignancy sharpening to a point. I thrust my hand forward, reaching for the chilled, desperate stretch against time, against legacy. "I can save you. We can be free." In that instant, a blinding light erupted from the center, consuming everything. The shadows roared in agony, their anguished wails mixing with the whispers of my ancestors as the pulse of the chamber quaked violently, the very fabric of reality threatening to split apart. With one last surge of energy, I lunged toward the child. The contact was electric, like a shock reverberating through my very being. And as I pulled her into my arms, the darkness shuddered violently, and in that moment, we were swallowed by the light. But the chilling reality dawned upon me too late. The darkness was not gone. It had merely retreated. As I looked into the child's eyes, I saw no reflection of innocence, but instead a void consuming the flicker of her spirit, merging with my own, my cries echoing against the relentless pulse of the house that we are free. And yet the child whispered, a new sorrow pouring from her mouth, "You will pay the price." And as the light began to falter, shadows coiling back to reclaim us, I knew the cycle was only just beginning. I had become the harbinger, the last key to release the darkness that would once again shroud the world in horror. Then came the final twist, a whisper echoing deep within the marrow of my bones. Welcome home. As the shadows consumed us both, a haunting laughter thundered through the empty void, promising that the horror had not ended at all, but was only waiting for me to embrace my new role within the endless night.